K9, German Shepherd puppy, was tied to a train track. What the child did next left everyone in shock. A trembling K9, German Shepherd puppy, helplessly tied to an abandoned train track. No one knew who had left him there or why, but when a child appeared and did something completely unexpected, everyone who witnessed it was left in shock. What really happened in that moment? Get ready for an emotional story of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between a dog and a human. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring you more inspiring stories like this one. Now, let's dive into the story. The old train tracks on the outskirts of town had been abandoned for years. Rusted rails stretched endlessly into the distance, surrounded by overgrown weeds and forgotten memories. No one had any reason to be there, except for the small trembling bundle of fur tied tightly to one of the tracks. The K9 German Shepherd puppy whimpered, his tiny body pressed against the cold steel. The rough rope around his neck dug into his soft skin, preventing any chance of escape. His dark brown eyes darted in every direction, filled with confusion and fear. He didn't understand what was happening, only that he was alone and in danger. His paws trembled as he struggled against the restraints, his little whimpers barely audible over the rustling wind. The distant sound of birds chirping did nothing to soothe him. He was trapped, helpless. Somewhere in the distance, a faint rumbling sound echoed. A train. Miles away, an 8-year-old boy named Tommy kicked a loose rock as he wandered near the tracks. His school had just let out, and instead of heading straight home, he had taken a shortcut through the overgrown field behind his house. He loved exploring, finding old relics from the past, pretending he was an adventurer on a great mission. But today was different. There was something in the air, something that made his skin prickle. It was a strange feeling, like the world was holding its breath. Then, a sound. Soft, faint. A desperate little cry. Tommy froze in place, his ears straining to hear it again. It was barely there, carried by the wind, but it was real. A whimper. Not the kind of sound the wind makes, not the rustling of leaves, or the distant hum of cars on the highway. It was a living thing. His heart pounded as he took slow steps toward the tracks. The tall grass brushed against his jeans, the crunch of gravel beneath his feet, making him more aware of the silence around him. Then, as he climbed onto the wooden beams of the old railway, his eyes locked onto it. A puppy. His breath caught in his throat. The tiny German Shepherd lay low to the ground, ears flattened, his entire body trembling. The rope around his neck was knotted tightly to one of the rusted rails. His fur was dirty, his paws covered in dust, and his eyes, those dark, desperate eyes, looked straight at Tommy with a silent plea. Tommy dropped his backpack and ran forward without thinking. His hands fumbled to untie the knot, but the rope was rough and tight, impossible for his small fingers to undo quickly. The puppy whimpered louder, flinching at every movement, but he didn't resist. He was too weak to fight back. Then, the sound that made Tommy's stomach drop. A distant rumble. He snapped his head up. Beyond the trees, barely visible through the gaps in the branches, was a train. His mind screamed at him to hurry. His fingers pulled harder at the knot, but it wouldn't budge. Panic rose in his chest, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The metal tracks beneath him began to vibrate ever so slightly. The train wasn't far. If he didn't do something now, it would be too late. He reached for his backpack, yanking at the zipper. He remembered he had scissors. The small pair from his school supply kit. His hands shook as he pulled them out, gripping them so tight his knuckles turned white. The train's horn blasted in the distance. Tommy's heart pounded in his ears as he positioned the blades against the thick rope. The scissors weren't meant for cutting anything this strong, but he had no choice. He squeezed them together, sawing desperately at the fibers. The train was getting closer. The puppy let out a pitiful whimper, sensing the danger. But he remained still. Tommy's hands were sweating, his arms aching, but he kept going, tearing through the rope strand by strand. The vibration beneath his feet grew stronger. The tracks began to rattle. The final thread of the rope snapped. Tommy didn't hesitate. He scooped the puppy into his arms, his small frame barely able to hold the trembling creature. With every ounce of strength he had, he ran. The train's horn screamed again. The metal beast surged forward, roaring down the tracks. Tommy threw himself off the rails just in time, landing hard in the dirt, the puppy held tightly against his chest. A rush of wind blasted past them as the train thundered by, rattling the ground. Dust and debris swirled in the air, stinging Tommy's eyes. But he didn't care. He curled his arms protectively around the little German Shepherd, feeling its small, rapid heartbeat against his own. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The only sound left was Tommy's ragged breathing and the soft whimpers of the puppy, now safe. He did it. But as the train disappeared into the distance and silence returned, one question remained. Who would do something like this? Tommy sat on the ground, his arms wrapped tightly around the trembling puppy. His heart was still hammering in his chest, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The train had passed, leaving behind only a whirlwind of dust and the lingering vibration in the earth. He had barely made it. The little German Shepherd whimpered softly, his tiny body pressed against Tommy's chest. His fur was warm despite the dirt and dust covering it, and his rapid heartbeat mirrored Tommy's own. For a moment, neither of them moved. It was as if time had frozen, the world holding its breath in the aftermath of what had just happened. Then, reality hit. Tommy pulled back slightly, looking down at the puppy. The rope that had trapped him still dangled loosely around his neck, the frayed ends swaying in the breeze. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had tied this puppy to the train tracks and left him to die. Anger bubbled up in Tommy's chest, hot and unfamiliar. Who could be so cruel? His eyes darted around the area, scanning for any sign of movement, any clue as to who had done this. The train tracks stretched in both directions, disappearing into the horizon. The surrounding field was empty, just endless grass and scattered trees. There was no one. He swallowed hard. He needed to get help. Carefully, Tommy adjusted his grip on the puppy and stood up. The dog was light, barely more than a handful of fur and bones. He felt fragile in Tommy's arms, as if he hadn't eaten in days. That thought made Tommy's stomach twist. Had the puppy been abandoned before being tied to the tracks? Had someone tried to get rid of him in the cruelest way possible? His mind swirled with questions as he started walking, his legs still shaky from the adrenaline. His house wasn't far, just across the field, past the old wooden fence that marked the property line. His parents would know what to do. The puppy let out a weak whimper, pressing its nose against Tommy's chest. "It's okay," Tommy murmured, adjusting his hold. "You're safe now." The walk home felt longer than usual. Every rustling leaf, every distant sound made Tommy glance over his shoulder. A strange unease crept over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching, that whoever had tied this puppy up might still be nearby. When he finally reached the fence, he climbed over it carefully, cradling the puppy close. His house, a small but cozy farmhouse, sat just beyond the open yard. The smell of dinner cooking drifted from the kitchen window. Normally, the scent of his mom's homemade stew would make his mouth water, but tonight, his stomach was too knotted to care. He ran up the porch steps, pushing the door open with his shoulder. "Mom! Dad!" he called, his voice urgent. His mother, a tall woman with kind eyes, appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, a wooden spoon in her hand. "Tommy? What?" Her eyes widened when she saw the puppy in his arms. "Oh my goodness, what happened?" Tommy rushed inside, placing the puppy gently on the couch. His father, who had been reading in the living room, set down his book and stood up, concern etched across his face. I found him tied to the train tracks, Tommy said breathlessly. Someone left him there. I barely got him out in time. His parents exchanged a shocked glance. His mother knelt beside the couch, running gentle hands over the puppy's frail body. The poor thing. He's so thin. She looked up at Tommy. Are you okay? Tommy nodded, though he wasn't sure if it was true. His hands were still trembling. His father let out a long breath, his expression darkening. Someone did this on purpose. I know, Tommy said, his voice tight. Who would do something like that? His mother stroked the puppy's head, her voice soft but firm. First, we need to get him cleaned up and fed. Then, we'll call the sheriff. Tommy's stomach flipped. The sheriff? That made it real. That meant this wasn't just some accident or mistake. This was a crime. His father nodded, already reaching for the phone. We need to report this. If someone could do this to a puppy, they could do worse. Tommy sat beside the puppy, watching as his mom gently wiped the dirt from its fur with a damp cloth. The puppy barely moved, too weak to resist. His eyes, big and brown, blinked up at Tommy, as if he understood that he had been saved. Tommy reached out and scratched behind the puppy's ears. You're gonna be okay, he whispered. But as his dad spoke to the sheriff on the phone, his deep voice, serious and concerned, Tommy couldn't shake the feeling crawling up his spine. Whoever did this was still out there, and something told him they wouldn't stop with just one puppy. Tommy sat beside the puppy, his fingers gently running through its soft fur. The little German shepherd had curled into a small ball on the couch, his ribs faintly visible beneath his thin coat. He looked exhausted, but safe. Still, a nagging fear lingered in Tommy's mind. His father's voice was firm as he spoke to the sheriff on the phone, explaining what had happened. Tommy listened carefully, his heart pounding as he heard snippets of the conversation. Yes, tied to the train tracks. My son found him just in time. No idea who did it. That's right, a German shepherd puppy, maybe 10 weeks old. Yes, we'll be here. Tommy swallowed hard. The sheriff was coming. That meant this was serious. That meant someone in town had deliberately tried to kill an innocent puppy, and no one knew who. His mother continued cleaning the puppy's fur with a warm cloth, her movements gentle yet precise. He's just skin and bones, she murmured, shaking her head. Who knows how long he's been starving. Tommy's hands curled into fists. The thought of someone abandoning the puppy was bad enough, but tying him to the train tracks? That was pure evil. A soft knock at the door made them all jump. His dad set down the phone. That was fast. But when he opened the door, it wasn't the sheriff. A tall man stood on the porch, his dark jacket zipped up high against the evening chill. His face was shadowed under the dim porch light, his sharp eyes flicking past Tommy's dad and landing directly on him. A slow, unsettling smile stretched across his lips. Evening, the man said, his voice deep and rough. Heard there was some commotion near the tracks. Thought I'd check in. Tommy's father frowned. Who are you? The man's smile didn't waver. Name's Carl. I work over at the feed store. His eyes slid past Tommy's father again, landing briefly on the couch. On the puppy. His expression darkened. Heard someone found a dog out there. Tommy felt a shiver crawl up his spine. How did this man know? His dad hesitated. Yeah, my son found him. Carl's jaw tensed. That's so. His gaze shifted back to Tommy, something unreadable in his eyes. Brave kid. Tommy clenched his hands together. He didn't like this man? Carl let out a low chuckle, stepping back. Well, just wanted to see what the fuss was about. Small town, you know. Word travels fast. His father nodded stiffly. Appreciate your concern. Carl gave one last glance at the puppy. Then, with a slow nod, He turned and walked back toward the road. Tommy didn't move until the sound of his boots crunching against the gravel disappeared into the night. His father shut the door and locked it. "That was weird," Tommy muttered. His mother's expression was tight as she stared at the closed door. "I don't like that man." His father sighed. "Neither do I." Tommy turned back to the puppy, reaching out to scratch behind his ears. The little mom barely reacted, his body weak from exhaustion. But for the first time since Tommy found him, his tail gave a tiny, hesitant wag. Tommy smiled. "I think he likes us." His mom exhaled softly, sitting beside him. "Well, he's safe now. That's what matters." But Tommy wasn't so sure, because as much as he wanted to believe this was over, something deep in his gut told him the real danger was just beginning. The air inside the house felt heavier than before, as if the strange visit from Carl had left something behind, an invisible tension that none of them could shake. Tommy sat on the couch beside the puppy, his fingers absent-mindedly stroking its fur. The little German shepherd had finally relaxed, his body curled into a small ball of warmth against Tommy's side. His breathing was slow, steady, but every so often, his ears would twitch, as if even in sleep, he wasn't fully at ease. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees beyond the fence. Tommy's father stood near the window, his jaw tight as he pulled the curtain back just enough to peer outside. His mother was still sitting beside him, though she was quiet, her lips pressed together in a thin line. The uneasy silence was broken by the distant sound of tires crunching over gravel. Headlights appeared through the window, cutting through the darkness. A familiar car pulled up the driveway, its red and blue lights flashing against the walls. The sheriff had arrived. Tommy let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His father was already heading to the door, unlocking it just as the sheriff stepped onto the porch. Sheriff Grayson was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, his dark uniform neatly pressed despite the long hours he worked. His gray-flecked beard made him look older than he probably was, but his sharp brown eyes were full of experience. He stepped inside with purpose, nodding toward Tommy's dad before his gaze landed on the couch. "That the pup?" he asked, his deep voice calm but firm. Tommy nodded. "Yeah. He was tied to the tracks and I barely got him out in time." The sheriff exhaled through his nose, kneeling beside the couch. His expression softened as he inspected the puppy, who barely stirred under his touch. "Poor guy," he muttered. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small notepad and pen. "Tell me everything you remember, son." Tommy recounted the entire story. The strange whimper he heard, the way he found the puppy, the panic of trying to untie the rope before the train arrived. His voice shook slightly as he described the final moments, the way the ground trembled beneath him as he barely made it off the tracks in time. Sheriff Grayson listened carefully, nodding occasionally, his pen scratching across the notepad. When Tommy finished, the sheriff glanced at Tommy's parents. "I'll be honest with you. This isn't the first report I've had of animal cruelty in the area. But this," he gestured toward the puppy, "this is different. Whoever did this wasn't just cruel. They wanted him dead." Tommy's stomach twisted at the words. He had known it was bad, but hearing it like that made it even worse. His dad folded his arms. "That man who showed up earlier? Carl. He knew about the dog before anyone else did. That doesn't sit right with me." The sheriff's expression darkened slightly. "Carl Whitaker?" Tommy's father nodded. Sheriff Grayson sighed. "I know Carl. He's been in and out of trouble before, mostly petty stuff, but if he's involved in this, we'll find out." Tommy glanced between them, his chest tightening. "So you think he did it?" The sheriff was quiet for a moment, tapping his pen against the notepad. "I think he knows more than he let on, but until we have proof, we can't accuse him of anything." A heavy silence settled over the room. The puppy shifted slightly, letting out a soft sigh. Tommy reached out and stroked his fur again, feeling the slow rhythm of his breathing. "What happens now?" his mother asked quietly. The sheriff stood up, tucking his notepad away. "I'll look into Carl, see if I can find any connections." His gaze flicked back to the puppy. As for him, well, the best thing would be to take him to the shelter. They'll check him out, make sure he's healthy. Tommy's heart dropped at the suggestion. "No," he said quickly. "He just got saved. He shouldn't have to go to a shelter." His mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tommy." "I'll take care of him," Tommy insisted, looking at his parents. "I'll feed him. I'll train him. Please." His dad hesitated, glancing at the sheriff, who watched the scene with a knowing look. After a long pause, his father exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Well," Sheriff Grayson said, giving a small shrug, "I'd say this pup already picked his person." A flicker of relief washed over Tommy's face. His father sighed again, but finally gave a small nod. "All right," his dad said. "But he's your responsibility." Tommy grinned, looking down at the puppy. "Did you hear that, buddy? You're staying." The little German shepherd stirred, lifting his head just enough to nuzzle into Tommy's side. A warm, familiar feeling spread through Tommy's chest. For the first time that night, he felt safe. But outside, beyond the porch and the quiet fields, the darkness stretched far and wide. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching. The house had settled into an uneasy silence. The sheriff had left after promising to investigate further, and Tommy's parents had gone to bed, though neither of them seemed entirely at ease. The puppy, now wrapped in an old blanket on the couch, had finally drifted into a deep sleep. Tommy lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. His mind refused to settle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the train tracks, heard the desperate whimpers of the puppy, felt the vibration of the steel rails beneath his feet as the train approached. Then there was Carl. Something about the man felt wrong. The way he had shown up so quickly, the way he knew about the puppy for anyone else, the way his cold eyes had lingered on the small German shepherd like he was checking to see if a problem had been taken care of. Tommy turned onto his side, trying to convince himself that it was over. The puppy was safe. The sheriff was handling things. But deep down, he knew the real danger hadn't passed. The night was still. No wind, no distant car engines, just the occasional creak of the old house settling. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to breathe slow and deep. He had just started to drift off when... Crack! Tommy's eyes snapped open. A noise from outside. He held his breath, straining to listen. Silence. Then, crunch. Footsteps. His heart slammed against his ribs. Someone was outside. Carefully, he slid out of bed, his bare feet touching the cool wooden floor. He crept toward the window, pulling the curtain back just a sliver. The yard stretched out under the faint glow of the moon. The old wooden fence stood in the distance, and beyond that, just darkness. For a moment, Tommy saw nothing. Then, a shadow moved, just beyond the fence line. A tall, thin figure stood perfectly still, half hidden in the trees. Watching. A shiver ran down Tommy's spine. His breath hitched. He wanted to tell himself it was just his imagination, a trick of the light, but he knew better. Someone was out there, and they were watching his house. The puppy let out a soft whimper from the couch, shifting in his sleep. Tommy turned away from the window, his pulse hammering. Was it Carl? Had he come back? He needed to tell his dad. He turned and moved as quickly and quietly as possible, slipping into the hallway. The floor creaked beneath his weight, but he didn't stop. His parents' room was just down the hall. Then another sound, closer this time. A soft tap, tap, tap on the porch. Tommy froze. His throat went dry. Someone was at the front door. His entire body tensed as he slowly backed up, heart pounding in his ears. His mind screamed at him to wake his father, to do something, but his legs felt like they were made of stone. Then, a new sound, not from outside, from the living room. A low, deep growl. Tommy turned his head. The puppy was no longer curled up in his blanket. He was awake and alert. The small German Shepherd stood near the couch, his tiny body rigid, ears perked up, eyes locked on the front door. A quiet but deadly growl rumbled from his throat, so low it was almost a vibration. Tommy didn't know how, but somehow the puppy sensed it too. Something wasn't right. Then, the doorknob moved. Tommy's stomach dropped. His breath came in short, sharp gasps as he watched the knob jiggle, slow and deliberate. Someone was trying to see if it was unlocked. The puppy let out a sharper growl, his tiny body lowering into a protective stance. Tommy snapped out of his frozen fear. He bolted for his parents' room, shoving the door open. "Dad, someone's outside!" His father shot up instantly, his military instincts kicking in. "What?" Tommy barely had time to answer before bang! A loud thud against the door made the entire house shake. His mother gasped, sitting up in bed. "Stay here," his father ordered, already grabbing the rifle from beneath the bed. His face was tight, controlled, but Tommy could see the flash of tension in his eyes. The puppy was now barking furiously, a small but fierce warning. Another bang at the door. The knob twisted again. Harder this time. Then, suddenly, silence. His father moved quickly, stepping into the hallway. Tommy and his mother followed cautiously. The puppy stood by the couch, still growling lowly. His tail was stiff, his ears trained toward the door. His father approached the window cautiously, rifle ready. He peeked through the curtain, jaw clenched. After a moment, he let out a slow breath. "They're gone." Tommy's heart was still racing. "Are you sure?" his mother whispered. His father nodded, though his face remained tense. "For now." Tommy swallowed hard. He turned to the puppy, still standing guard. His little body alert. Whoever had been outside had left. But Tommy had the sickening feeling that this wasn't the last time they had come. And this time, the puppy had saved them. The silence after the intruder disappeared was almost as terrifying as the moment it had happened. Tommy stood in the dimly lit hallway, his breathing uneven, his heart still hammering inside his chest. His father lowered the rifle slightly but didn't put it away. His mother clutched the front of her nightgown, her wide eyes darting toward the front door, as if expecting another sudden bang. The puppy, still standing in the living room, kept his small but sturdy body stiff, his ears alert, his tail low but tense. A faint growl rumbled in his throat, but now it sounded more confused than aggressive. Like he knew the threat had passed, but wasn't sure if it was truly over. Tommy swallowed hard. "Who was that?" he whispered. His father didn't answer immediately. He took a slow step toward the window, his jaw tight, muscles tense. He peeked through these curtains again, scanning the yard. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a slow breath and turned back toward them. Whoever it was, they're gone now. His mother exhaled sharply, her shoulders sagging. "We need to call the sheriff, now!" His father nodded. Without another word, he grabbed the phone and dialed. Tommy stood frozen in place as he listened to his father's calm but urgent voice, explaining what had just happened. The words, "tried to get inside," made his stomach twist. The puppy let out a quiet whimper, looking up at Tommy with big, uncertain eyes. Tommy knelt beside him, running his fingers through the soft fur on the back of his neck. "It's okay, buddy," he murmured. "You were really brave." The puppy responded by pressing his tiny body closer, his tail giving a hesitant wag. Tommy's dad hung up the phone. "Sheriff Grayson is on his way," he said. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "He said he'll send someone to patrol the area for the rest of the night." Tommy's mother shook her head. This can't be a coincidence. First, the puppy, and now this? Someone doesn't want him here. Tommy stiffened at her words. She was right. Whoever had tied the puppy to the train tracks had done it expecting him to die. And now that he had been rescued, someone was trying to fix their mistake. The realization sent a cold chill down his spine. His father must have been thinking the same thing, because he sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "We'll keep the doors locked. No one's taking this dog from us." Tommy's grip on the puppy tightened slightly. No one. A few minutes later, flashing blue and red lights washed over the house as Sheriff Grayson pulled up the driveway for the second time that night. He stepped out of his vehicle, his boots crunching against the gravel as he made his way to the porch. His expression was unreadable, but Tommy noticed how his mud hovered near the holster at his hip, as if he were ready for anything. His father led him inside, closing the door quickly behind him. The sheriff's gaze swept across the room, landing on the puppy. "He all right?" Tommy nodded. "Yeah, but I think he knew something was wrong before we did. He started growling before we even heard the doorknob move." Sheriff Grayson nodded approvingly. "Smart pup." Then his expression darkened. "Tell me exactly what happened." Tommy and his father recounted the events in detail. The footsteps outside, the jiggling doorknob, the loud bang against the door. The sheriff listened carefully, occasionally jotting things down in his notepad. When they finished, he let out a long sigh. "This wasn't random," he said. "Someone wanted inside. And I'd bet my badge it has to do with that dog." Tommy's mother crossed her arms. "Carl." Sheriff Grayson didn't respond immediately, but the way his jaw tightened said enough. "I'll be paying him a visit first thing in the morning." Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "What if they come back?" The sheriff looked at him. His expression was serious but steady. "We won't let that happen. I'll have a patrol car stationed near your house all night. If anything or anyone shows up, we'll catch them." Tommy nodded, but the unease in his stomach didn't fade. They had already tried once. What if next time they didn't stop at the door? Sheriff Grayson turned to Tommy's father. "Keep the rifle close, and if anything feels off, you call me. No hesitation." His father nodded. "You got it." The sheriff stayed a little longer, checking the perimeter of the house, shining his flashlight along the fence line. When he finally left, Tommy stood at the window, watching the patrol car settle near the edge of their property. It was reassuring, but not enough to make him feel truly safe. Behind him, the puppy let out a soft sigh and curled up on the couch again, his small body rising and falling with each breath. Tommy turned to his parents. "Can he sleep in my room tonight?" His mother hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I think that's a good idea." Tommy carefully picked up the puppy and carried him to his room, setting him down on the bed beside him. The little dog immediately curled up against his side, warm and steady. As Tommy lay there staring at the ceiling, exhaustion pulled at his body. But his aunt remained alert. Somewhere in the darkness outside, someone was still watching. And Tommy had a terrible feeling they weren't finished yet. Tommy woke up to the sound of tires crunching on gravel. The early morning light filtered through his curtains as he sat up, the puppy still curled beside him. A patrol car was parked near the fence, but what made his stomach twist was another truck, old, rusty, memorable, and familiar. Carl. Sheriff Grayson was already outside, standing firm as Carl leaned against his truck, smirking like he had nothing to hide. Tommy stayed by the window, heart pounding as his father joined the sheriff. Carl shrugged. "Didn't do nothing wrong, Sheriff. Just heard you were asking about me." Grayson's eyes narrowed. You showed up at their house last night. Why? Carl's smirk didn't fade. Just being friendly. His gaze flicked toward the house. Kid in there sure got guts, taking in a stray. Tommy clenched his fists. He knew what Carl was saying. He knew. The sheriff's voice was sharp. You know anything about a puppy being tied to the train tracks? Carl chuckled. That's so. He rubbed his chin. Shame about that dog. Real shame. Tommy's father stepped forward. If you ever come near my family again, you'll regret it. Carl's smile disappeared. His eyes darkened, but he didn't say a word. He simply tipped his hat, climbed into his truck, and drove away. Sheriff Grayson exhaled. That's not a man who lets things go. He looked at Tommy's dad. Keep your rifle close. I'll make sure he knows we're watching. Tommy swallowed hard. He knew this wasn't over. Days passed. No sign of Carl. No late-night footsteps. But the feeling of being watched never quite left. The puppy, now named Shadow, was growing stronger. He followed Tommy everywhere, his sharp ears always alert, his eyes constantly scanning for danger. One afternoon, Sheriff Grayson stopped by. We don't have proof Carl was involved, he admitted. But he knows we're onto him. Tommy looked at Shadow. What if he comes back? The sheriff crouched, ruffling the puppy's fur. Then you've got one of the best protectors by your side. That night, as Tommy lay in bed with Shadow curled beside him, he realized something. Carl might still be out there. The danger might not be completely gone. But Shadow wasn't just any dog. He was a fighter, a survivor. And most importantly, he wasn't alone anymore.